Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday, you said tomorrow, so just do it! Make your dreams come true! Just do it!
Welcome to Successful Dropout. This podcast is for the outliers, the innovators, the rebels, those that dare to dream and act on their dreams. I'm your host, Kylan Ginger. Join me as we find out what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed. What is up, Successful Dropouts? Get stoked because today on the show we have Matt Boney. Matt is originally from the Rocky Mountains in Idaho and moved to Miami after founding Daycation and leaving school at Brown University. The goal was to get closer to the hotels Daycation was partnering with to begin building the company. Matt worked in hotels growing up in Idaho and always had a passion for architecture and hospitality. He left school after his first year at Brown, where he took courses in economics, urban studies, math, business, and philosophy. He's also a good friend of Micah, who's been on the show before, one of our very own Successful Dropouts. But Matt, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, man. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you're doing. Just give us a little overview.
Thank you. Yeah, pleasure to be here, Kylan. Really like the show and super stoked to be on here. So I started this company, Daycation, about 2 years ago after leaving school at Brown, and moved down to Miami here. And the company basically allows people that want to take a vacation for the day, aka hang out at a pool, beach, spa, steam room, gym, all the amenities at the hotel. It allows them to hang out there for a fee without having to spend the night at the hotel. It's a cool way to enjoy the properties in like a residence city, and or if you're traveling, let's say at an Airbnb or at a hotel that doesn't have great facilities, it's a great way to enhance your vacation. I've been working on that for a while, and it's been an incredible journey so far.
Yeah, for real, man. That sounds like a phenomenal idea. It also sounds like there might be some interesting stories behind how you came up with that idea.
Sure, yeah. So again, I'm originally from Idaho, and my dad owns a catering company back home, and he started it the year I was born, so in 1995. And as soon as I was tall enough to reach the dishwasher, he sort of employed me for free in his catering company. And I would wash. Right on. It was his own startup. And I would wash the dishes for him. And I got sort of my first business experience really on the ground level of on the food and beverage side of hospitality. And then migrated over to the hotel side when I was starting high school. Worked as a front desk agent, as a bellman, valet, pretty much every starting role at a hotel. And I always had, as you mentioned in my biography, this passion for architecture too. So when it came time to enroll in college, I was deciding between going to Cornell Hotel School, I would have been in the same class as Micah, or going to Brown to study economics. And I thought to myself, well, I love hospitality, I love architecture, I love all these things that would be great to pursue at Cornell, but let's see what else is out there. So trying to see, maybe I would discover something at Brown that would have been, different, but here we are again, back in hospitality. So, the way the company started was I had these perspectives from working in the industry. Never really thought that much about empty or underutilized hotel amenities until I was on spring break with one of my best friends from college. And we were staying at this hotel in Cancun, but down the beach were all these amazing hotels that had incredible facilities, and everybody was down there having fun. Yeah. And of course we thought, oh, this is great. Let's just walk down and walk into the hotel. So we walked down to this hotel and walk in the front door. Everything seems good. We're making our way back to the pool, and then we're stopped by the security guard, and he says, oh, you guys don't have wristbands. You aren't spending the night at the hotel. You cannot come in and hang out unless you have an overnight room. And we're like, is there any way we can pay you? We're like pulling pesos out of our pockets. Like, hey, is there any way we can come in here? And he's like, no, you have to have a room.
Trying to bribe the security guard.
We tried to bribe.
That's great.
And yeah, so that was kind of, that was a little experience that I really didn't think that much about again until I was at Brown, and I was laying in bed, and I remember this moment like very, very distinctly in April, I think 2015, and I just like woke up, and from one second to the next, I was like, oh my God, like I have to be the guy that starts this company that would allow people to use hotel amenities around the world without having to spend the night. And it seemed like the best combination of all my interests, like in one split second. It was a very, very memorable moment that I don't know. I was very lucky to have that. Sort of that spark was what lit or ignited the journey from there.
I like how you said that it seemed to be a combination of all your interests, because that's been sort of a theme the last few episodes. We talked about that a bit with Cheyenne Noel, who was on the show. This journey to sort of explore all your different interests and passions and curiosities and eventually settle into something that is a combination of all of those is ideal. And it sounds like you were possibly able to do this at a younger age just because you had identified an interest in hospitality and architecture, things of that nature earlier on, and you sort of worked in that environment for so long. I mean, because I think a lot of people hear these stories like, oh, I had a dream and it just all came to me so quick in this vision and this company I was supposed to build or start, and people are frustrated that that's not happening for them. They're wrestling with all these different ideas. They don't know what to do. They may want to start a business but have no clue what kind of business. I mean, for me, that was the case for a long time. And then even with this podcast, I have a very similar story to yours where I had thrown out the name Successful Dropout to my sister. She had been starting a podcast and she didn't like it. But it stuck with me. It just stayed in my head for a couple days. And then I remember there was a period of time where in the space of like an hour or two, the entire vision for, everything I wanted to do with this name and this brand and community sort of flooded into my head. But I had been wanting to start a podcast and build a community for several years prior to that. And I had my head in that game, listening to other podcasters, checking out other communities for a very long time. And so then it's this when preparedness meets opportunity,
exactly,
sort of thing. So that's really cool, man. But you started out doing dishes. Do you still like to do dishes?
I was doing dishes this morning, so
that's good.
Yeah, it's meditative for me now. It's not as much financial gain, or actually.
Yes, I like. That's what I was trying to get to, because I love doing dishes personally. I know this is random, but it is kind of meditative for me. But you can ask any of my friends if I'm over at their house, like that's how I give back. Like try to be a good guest. Is I'm always doing the dishes. I don't know why people don't like it, but it is strangely meditative. That's a good way to put it.
Well, so yeah, and I love your comment there about everybody. A lot of people might be struggling with having sort of this epiphany, which I never envisioned myself having one of these things. I actually had kind of, I just scrolled back to a note in my phone I haven't opened since April 2015. Since February 2015. So before I thought of this idea. And this might, shed some light on this concept. I was lucky to be able to meet Barry Sternlicht, so the guy that started Starwood Capital and Starwood Hotels, which is a huge brand. It owns like W Hotels and St. Regis and all these very famous hotel brands. And they just recently were acquired by Marriott. And he was an alum of Brown, and he came in to give a speech. And I have this note in my phone that I just pulled up here. And these are the questions I was going to ask him, and that I did, I think, ask him. And one of them was, how should I become a real estate entrepreneur? How does Airbnb affect your current business, and how do you envision it affecting future business? Have you been able to influence the design of your projects? What should I seek at Brown? And are there any ways to get involved at Starwood Capital? So you can see that's before I thought of the idea, but my mind was kind of, I guess, on the path of figuring out, that was a desire of mine, was to figure out how the heck could I get somewhere warm like Miami and do something in real estate. Like,
Yeah.
like there was subconscious movement towards an interest. So I think for maybe anyone listening that's trying to have sort of that moment or that idea, it's just about constantly questioning whatever space you're in or whatever space you seem interested in, and thinking about what trends and facets are affecting it, and asking experts and people that have been in that industry about what changes they see coming and what things they find interesting, what things are broken. Kind of like Micah said in his interview, his mom was telling him that everything is broken to some degree, and you can always find a way to improve it. So getting around people that are in something you feel interested in and asking them sorts of questions like this, I think might lead to those other ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can look back on a lot of my journaling and random notes in my phone too. Lots of stuff, that's everywhere among, many different interests and stuff like that. But you can kind of see a central theme to it all. A lot of things that are manifested now that I had no idea would sort of manifest in this way a couple of years back. But, you're right. It's so powerful to be able to even just journaling on your thoughts. And it seems messy and incoherent now, and like it's not really helping. I think you'll put effort into a lot of things that don't seem to manifest in any tangible way for a long time. But it's amazing, and that is the season of preparedness that I'm talking about. And it's amazing how long that can last sometimes and how tough it can be. But It is also amazing how when just the right opportunity comes along, you can be prepared either subconsciously or consciously to sort of snag it. And for you, it was probably just this tiny little seed of an idea, but you had enough experience and enough inspiration in that area to be able to sort of build this vision in your mind, which is now Daycation, which I'm really curious about. Actually, I'd love you to go a little bit more into Daycation. What it is? Is it an app? If so, how do you use it? And how does it actually function? How can people listening get involved? It does sound cool. I've done my fair share of I don't know what you call it, but yeah, we lived in Pensacola, close to Pensacola Beach for a long time. There's a lot of great hotels on that beach with some great swimming pools, and my wife and I definitely snuck in a couple.
Yeah. What's so funny is I feel like that was one of my favorite things to do in Idaho too, and that's the funniest thing because everybody has sort of that experience. Like you could talk to almost anybody on the street randomly, and they've probably snuck into a hotel pool before, which is pretty hilarious. So I guess we're legitimizing that system. But to get to your question, right now Daycation is a web app, aka website. It's daycationapp.com. And so how people reserve is, it works on two sides of a marketplace. So for the user side or the guest side, the guest will go on to daycationapp.com. They can scroll around and see which different hotels we offer in their city. And it's as simple as, it's very similar to Airbnb's website. Basically, you're going to see the listing, and you can choose how many adults or kids you want to have go. And then you just buy the pass, and it gets sent to your email. So then you show the front desk when you go to the hotel your email receipt, and then they check you in on their back-end system and allow you to just go in, and they give you access to all the amenities. So it's kind of like pool crashing, but with a little bit of payment and a lot more legitimacy.
Yeah.
And then on the hotel side, it's pretty simple as well. We sign up our hotel partners with different contracts that we put together, and then they basically onboard their staff onto our back-end platform where they can see who's coming for the day, regulate occupancy, and a lot more different sort of controls that they want for the hotel. So you have a specific program that you've built or platform that you've built that they integrate into their system. Well, actually, right now we're staying as light as possible just for speed's purposes, meaning no integration right now. But that's definitely something that's coming in the future. Gotcha. What a neat idea, man. That's pretty sweet. Thank you. I like that a lot. Is there anybody else in the space doing what you're doing, or are you kind of no competitors? when I first had the idea and I Googled this to see like, what else is anybody else doing this, literally nothing came up. And I think that got me really excited in a way that probably wasn't healthy. Like, I was like, God,
Yeah.
this is the best idea ever. No one's doing this and whatever. And so I really I felt like I maybe rushed myself a lot in a lot of things at the beginning to just try to be first. Since then, competitors have popped up, which actually is comforting and pretty helpful in a way, because it's providing more education to the hotel marketplace on why this is a good idea. And like online travel agencies, so like Expedia and Hotwire and all these different ways to book hotels, it's pretty possible that there will be a lot of different ways to book hotel amenities for the day. Granted, our goal is to, of course, be the leading system in that space. But yeah, so I think my view of competition has changed dramatically since the beginning of the entrepreneurial journey, where I was very fearful of it at the beginning, and now I've kind of definitely seen the benefits of competition, actually.
Yeah. I hear you, man. It's a really cool feeling too when you do Google an idea and it you can't see anybody else doing it. I remember doing that with Successful Dropout. Just, is there an authority anywhere on this space? And not one came up.
Yeah.
And it was just that's a really neat feeling. That won't always be the case, but it's sure neat when it does happen. I'm curious to hear about your story around dropping out of university and how that went. What was it exactly that drove you to make that decision, and how did that go over with family and friends?
Yeah, sure. So it's always an interesting question because I think so many people have family and friends push back on that decision. I was incredibly blessed to have my family be very supportive of my decision, and they've just been nothing but helpful along the entire way. So
because it sounds like your dad was an entrepreneur. I don't know if your mom was involved in that at all, but I imagine that's probably why they were pretty supportive.
Yeah, I think that definitely has a lot to do with it, and I think they see that this is really where or what I'm passionate about, and sort of where I've been subconsciously focused over the last 6 years or something anyway. So I think they definitely like that. Also, they don't have to pay for school right now, so that's good.
I'm probably happy about that.
No, and actually, what's funny is one of my co-founders was also taking leave from school, and he's slowly kind of like sneaking in an hour of class here and there because his mom is quite the opposite and very adamant about him getting his degree. So I've seen it kind of from both sides. Granted, I wasn't in his shoes exactly, but it's really interesting, that decision, and how much of a role even other family members play in it, and sort of what amount of autonomy is given to a 19-year-old. I was 19 when I left, or in his case, 22. So yeah, I mean, I was really lucky. The tricky part was, and I was actually kind of convinced by a friend of mine. So the same friend that I went to Cancun with told me, he was like, Matt, if you go back to school, like, you probably just won't leave. And this was during the summer after my first year. And I said to him, I was like, yeah, you might be right, because as soon as you're back in that environment and everybody else is on the same track of, graduate in 4 years, and these are the classes I'm choosing, and this is what's going on with my extracurriculars, it's very, very tempting to be part of that system, and you have the solidarity of everybody else on campus doing the same thing. So I don't know, for anybody that's looking at that decision, I think starting something early spring and moving into the summer and seeing what sort of progress you can make on it during the summer is a great thing to do. And if you're lucky enough to have a school that lets you take a leave of absence or something like that, move into the late summer and make that decision then, and just kind of, rather than like one day to the next saying, okay, I'm dropping out.
Yeah. It's more like instead of dropping out, you're dropping into something, is what you're saying.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a huge distinction, very important.
Yeah, and I think a lot of schools will do that, sort of let you take a leave of absence. I don't think we've mentioned it on the show for a while, but dropping out doesn't have to mean leaving school for good. I mean, really, you can take technically a leave of absence, and I think it probably depends on the school, but there's probably a period of time in which you can come back and pick up where you left off.
And in the education side of all that, I think that, a lot of people view, or maybe the past generations view, dropping out of school as ending your education or ending your commitment to education. And I think, if anything, for myself, I've actually done more to foster my sense of, to foster my sense of curiosity and also to go about acquiring knowledge on my own. I feel like I've learned a ton about myself in general, and then a lot, technically speaking, as well, just by leaving school and having that passion to pursue knowledge even more, without it being sort of force fed to me.
Yeah, 'cause it's not hard to be a continual learner when you're learning things you're curious about, and when you have the freedom to pursue things you're curious about.
Yeah, 100%. That's very true.
So, out of those things you've learned, I want to talk about some of the things you've learned, I guess, in the first sort of stages of building this, Daycation. I'd be curious, what stands out to you as sort of a major challenge you've had to work through, maybe a darker time. I mean, perhaps you haven't gotten there yet, but if something stands out to you, what would that be?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So the story kind of goes that I said, okay, you're probably right, to my friend, and this will, throughout the story, probably illustrate that exact answer to that question. So my friend says, yeah, if you don't go back, or if you go back, you might not leave. And I said, yeah, okay, you're probably right. So as soon as that happens, that's the end of the summer in 2015, and I then that was about 3 weeks before school started that I made that decision. So then I kind of had like 3 weeks to figure out, like, okay, how the heck do I get out of Idaho? That's where I was at that point. And where am I going to go, and what's the next move? So I packed my suitcase, and the first thing I did was I flew to Pennsylvania to actually stay on my friend's couch, who he had just transferred to Wharton from Brown. So I thought maybe that's a good place to run into some people that have business connections and or connections in the investment side. So basically, I'm staying at my friend's place at University of Pennsylvania on his couch for like a week and a half. By that time, I realize I can't really get into the dorms anymore and stay there for free. So I know I need to make my next move. And I was determined to get to Miami because I knew that was one of the top markets that we would need to lock down. And I basically was eating ramen, didn't know anybody in Miami, had my suitcase, and said, okay, screw it. Like, let's go down there and see what I can do. So I fly down to Miami. I walk up to a few different hotels, get told, no, we don't want to partner with you, by basically every single one of them. I'm like, okay, this is good.
Did you have any sort of functional product or app or anything while you were approaching them?
Nothing really that I was showing them. I did have, so actually the very first iteration of our platform was a mobile app, but it had no hotel-facing dashboard or like anything like that. So basically they were seeing this kid with a iPhone and a screen that he's showing them on his iPhone that like doesn't really, like, I didn't know anything. Like, I still don't know anything, but I knew less of anything than I do now, maybe. And so yeah, I got a lot of no's, and I was kind of like, wow, interesting. I should probably reassess how I'm doing this. So
did you get any other information besides no's though, or did you know enough to sort of ask maybe why are you saying no, or would this be remotely interesting to you? I mean, you were kind of doing some market research there at the same time.
Yep, I was doing market research. So that's a great question. I did I did get some answers, but what I've found over the last few years, I mean, we've gone on to partner with many more hotels, and things are looking up, so that's good. But so the story ends well. But to your point, I did ask, and a lot of it was kind of, I think the hotel industry is very, I don't know, it's very antiquated, and there's a lot of logic in the hospitality industry that is not really justified logic, in my opinion. Like, things are the way they are because they are the way they are.
Yeah, right.
The response. So that's kind of the resistance to part of the system. People just in general have adversity, or have I don't know. I think they don't really like change in the hospitality industry that much, especially when it involves.
We can say a lot of the same things about the education industry too. We do say a lot of the same things.
Probably any industry, but yeah, you're totally right. It's so it's crazy. I mean, I would get a lot of like, oh well, we just don't have room for the guests that you would bring us, and I'd walk out to the pool and there were 50 empty
just nobody
chairs.
there.
Yeah, or no, we can't do that. And then I'd say why, and they'd say, well, because we don't do that. And I'd be like, well, oh, okay, that's great. That's a good reason. A lot of stuff like that. So a lot of stuff like that. And I found out that the hotel industry is all about person-to-person connection. It's all about having a network. It's all about who knows who. And then if your product does something fairly good for them, then they'll probably adopt it if they like you and they like people you know. Mm-hmm. So far. Maybe that's a cynical way to look at it, but I think that's the prevalent mindset in that industry. Which hopefully will be able to change. And I think companies like Airbnb that are disrupting the hospitality industry and using a lot more data and things to make decisions, I think are prompting the industry to be more, just to be smarter in general, in terms of how they make decisions and what things they choose to adopt and the speed of innovation. So I'm excited about that. But I think that was kind of disappointing for me to come down here and try that out and, you know, kind of get the rejections, but also good, you know, a good check in terms of where I was and how things I perceived were not perceived the same way by other people. So
that's so good. I don't mean to hold you up on that part of the story, but I think it's just very key for people listening, because it's a really tough thing to take an idea, and before you even have something built, before you feel like it's perfect or you have a functioning product or service, to actually get out there and start talking to people and start pitching it. But it's so important because you learn so much, and you know, you already learned so much. I can't remember if it's, I don't know, is it Sam Ovens? Maybe Sam Ovens. He created it's an app for property inspectors. Okay. You know what I'm talking about at all?
I've seen that guy. I don't know if I ever listened to like anything long that he did, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, you can see him all over Facebook. I think he's the right guy, but he got his start with an app he created for property inspectors. Basically, just saw that there was a need to more systematize the process, modernize it a bit, and make it really sleek and approachable more on an app. And before he even had the thing built, he put together enough images and stuff to put together enough of a presentation so people could grasp a vision of what he's talking about. But then he actually approached property managers and property inspectors and stuff and talked to them and said, essentially, is this something you would pay for? And long story short, he got a lot of great feedback, market research. Some people paid up front for this thing that wasn't even built yet. But because of that early onset research, he was able to know how to build the thing better. He didn't waste a lot of time building something that nobody wanted, in other words. And so I just wanted to draw that out. So it's neat that you did that, but please continue.
No, I think that's a spectacular point. And I mean, we've been talking a lot about this internally with myself and my team, and there's a huge balance that needs to be found between internally building a product. So if it's a technical product, like not spending, like you're saying, even like months, days, hours, or even like, you know, some people are spending years before they're launching their products, right? Which is is, I think, kind of crazy. But I think at the same time, there's this balance of, okay, so we need to build the product to a degree where, for us, the hotels will look at it seriously. So, AKA, we have like a dashboard and some of these functionalities that are expected in the industry. So when you're starting off like with a B2B company, so for us on the hotel side, there's kind of like a certain threshold that you might need to hit before people take you seriously in terms of sales. And I think there's a lot of people stopping or pivoting way too early because they haven't taken the time to either get the product to the level it needs to be at or had the persistence in sales to have all the conversations that are no's and change them to yeses, or find the ones that are yeses and they just say, okay, well, we're not seeing huge month-over-month growth. Let's just pivot now. So I don't know. I think that mentality has been built into kind of the culture these days, like through maybe even like a lot of, kind of the Silicon Valley mentality of like just growth month over month as fast as you can, do whatever you can to get that growth. Yes, that's true. But you look at companies like Airbnb that took a long time to get traction, some of the most valuable startups that people thought were crazy when they started. So I think there has to be a balance between moving quickly and finding traction, but at the same time being persistent and getting your product to the place where it needs to be adopted before you just say, well, that's never going to work, and you pivot.
Yeah, that's one of the points I know you threw out to me and in some of our email correspondence. You said, that one of the lessons you learned is don't give up even when the going gets really painful. You said you think perseverance is often overlooked as a key trait to success in entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. A lot of people quit too early. Have you read the book, what's it called? Is it 3 Feet from Gold?
I've read Think and Grow Rich, which I think references that story.
Yeah.
Which it's all about, I guess it's the guy that was digging during the gold rush and then quit and sold his machinery and somebody else bought it and found the gold mine 3 feet away.
Yeah.
No, it's so true. And I think the word pivot is taken, at least I took it completely wrong when I first started the company. Pivoting doesn't have to be in product. It can be in sales methodology. It can be in, pivoting how your team is structured. There can be plenty of pivots that don't revolve around changing the main business idea that can lead to your ultimate success. It can be pivoting customers, how you approach the market, your own branding, like anything like that can be technically a pivot that may lead to your ultimate success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a fantastic point. I say the phrase, and it's the name of a podcast out there, and I know the gal who runs it. She's a great gal, but switch, pivot, or quit is what I say, which those are typically when you're not sure that the direction you're heading in any capacity is the right one anymore. Those are typically your options. You can either completely switch to something else. You can pivot slightly and just head a bit of a different direction, but still kind of keep the core of what you were doing, or you can quit altogether. And it's an interesting conversation around knowing when to do one of those. So maybe you have some stories so far from the building of Daycation where you guys have had to do that.
Yeah. We've been experimenting with different market segments here in Miami on the user side to find better market fit. And we found different options to be appealing to different people. Like originally, we didn't really want to cater towards the family market. Like we wanted it to be more sort of like a yuppie. And we found a lot of the bookings are coming from like two parents that have two kids. And so we added a kids option, stuff like that. Things you'll find that maybe are not your original vision for the customer base, but maybe just switching a little bit of your marketing or who you're targeting in that could lead to like really great growth for you. So I would always encourage somebody to, before they decide to completely pivot the idea, maybe just see if it's the right people that you're marketing it to, and you're looking in the right place for customers. I think that's one of them. On the hotel side, I think we pivoted our sales model where now it's way less analytical in terms of what we're giving the hotel, and it's less logical. It's more relationship based in terms of sales process.
Yeah.
Which kind of like, unfortunately for, I guess, myself, just because that's kind of how my mind works, is like, if it's logical and it's going to improve something, I would probably do it. But
right.
It's funny how like giving people free money can sometimes be tough.
Yeah, right. No, I get it. So much about business is about relationships.
Yeah, really, no, that's incredibly true. So I think just from my own, like in my own story of just growing as a person, and learning that relationships in terms of sales are incredibly important, and perhaps more important than any sort of value proposition you can bring them, at least for this industry is really, really critical. Very interesting.
Yeah, very true. So, and speaking of stories, I know you had started one and we kind of got a little bit off track, but you kind of left off where you were pitching to these hotels. They shut you down. You were pretty frustrated. What happened next?
What happened next? I hit one sort of low point where I kind of bow my head and say, okay, I'll go back to Brown, not enroll as a student, but to sleep on a dorm room floor there and work on building up the back end of the platform and creating some more legitimacy, which I viewed as one of the main hurdles to getting another hotel partner. So I go back to Brown. I'm living on my friend's floor again, the one that said if you don't leave now, you probably won't leave. And at the time, we're running very, very low on cash. So eating like once a day, getting really skinny. People are like, "Oh my God, you look horrible." Okay,
that's
I know.
Great.
And I failed to mention, we did sign up the hotel I worked at in Idaho over the summer. So again, relationship-based sale. So we did have like one hotel partner that was functioning, and then when I went back to Providence, we basically went down to this hotel downtown. It was called the Omni Providence, and they sold day passes, but they sold them like offline, just pen and paper. And so we went in and like got like $200 out of the ATM, and these passes were $10 each, and they were like really tentative to partner with us. So we just went up and we were like, "Hey, we'll buy from you like 20 passes with this $200 in cash if we can resell them on our site." Like, just to see if people would buy these things like on the internet. And
that's a sweet idea, though.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. That's actually how we got like a number of our first hotel properties, which is like emptying all your bank balance out of the ATM to buy places that like you're going to spend money on trying to sell. Is not
that's risky too.
It is, man. It's not always the best feeling, but if you really believe in it and you're willing to go through it, I think at least for us, it ended up being worth it. So we go down to the Omni. We convince these guys, okay, we'll let you sell our passes if you buy them up front in cash. So buy these passes with the cash, basically the last money I had left. Sell the passes pretty quickly, probably less than a month, less than a few weeks to sell all the 20 passes. We start selling more. And at the time, I get introduced to Rough Draft Ventures, which is based it's based in Boston, but it's part of General Catalyst. They also invest in Micah's company, MadeBot. And we're coming to like the very end of our cash, and I get on the train to go to Boston to pitch these guys, and it's kind of like, if this doesn't work, like I'm going to go home to Idaho and wash dishes again and then go back to school or something to get more money to then continue with the company. So we roll in, and we have what we thought was a great pitch, and get back to school. I'm back to the blow up air mattress that's like pretty much popped. It was actually like deflating. I had to like plug it with like a napkin and like tape, try to keep it
That's great.
Full of air. And so I'm sleeping on the floor, and my friend's like, "Dude, what are you doing? Like, you're not eating. You're on this like crappy mattress. Like, your company's not selling or like you guys are buying passes with cash, and he's just kind of like, what the heck is going on? And so that night we just don't hear back from Rough Draft Ventures, and they said like, we'll send you an email as soon as we make our decision. And so we're just biting our nails like, oh my God, is this going to happen? And then at 11:59 at night, like we get the email, and they're like, well, we're going to fund you guys. And we're like, oh, thank God. So get a little bit of money in the bank. It was very, very small investment, but super helpful at the time. So get the money, and then I'm like, okay, now with this new platform and like the brand Omni kind of working with us, I'm going to go back to Miami and see if I can sign up a hotel. And I go back down. I end up living at this family's house that like burnt down, and then they just hadn't moved back in yet, and they were renovating it. And so there was just extra space, and they were like a friend of a friend, and they said like, you can come stay here for a little while. And that's how I end up meeting my other co-founder, because he's a friend of theirs. And long story short, like I meet this guy. He tells me, oh yeah, like I grew up here in Miami. His name is Alex. And he's currently the COO of our company. And he was at University of Miami. He's the one whose mom was kind of telling him like, oh, don't leave school.
Right.
And he says like, oh yeah, I've been working on a lot of different entrepreneurial ventures. I'm running the finance club, but I think like if you weren't, like if I didn't know you and like you, like I would just go do this same company that you're doing right now on my own. And I was like, well, that would be somebody that I should like consider as somebody that could be a potential co-founder or someone I could work with. So I say, okay, let's jump in your car and see if we can go sign up a hotel. We jump in his car, and then in less than, 3 hours, we've talked to 3 hotels and gotten like 3 hotels. Every single one of them was like, yeah, we'll sign up.
Really?
Yeah, it was crazy, actually. It was really crazy.
So what made the difference this time?
I think it was a mixture of, well, we didn't target. So when I came down the first time, I went for like the biggest hotels. So I was walking into like the Fontainebleau and the ones that everybody knew about.
Right.
This time we went for a little bit smaller boutique hotels, and I had an email conversation with the guy, like the first one to sign up, that we still have today, one of our favorite hotel partners, Metropolitan by Como. And I had like an email conversation with this guy like 6 months prior, and he was just like, no, we're not interested in doing the thing. And I guess every conversation starts with no, because we walk into the hotel, talk to the guy for like an hour. And I think the difference this time was we had the back end of the platform, 2 of us at the meeting, which helps a little bit maybe with confidence and with,
right. Yeah. Oh, like this kid isn't just right off the street with some fresh idea. He's he's got a team with him.
Yeah, exactly. I think anything like that, like there are these funny little tricks you can do.
Perception is reality, right?
Yeah, it's so true, man. It's really true. It's crazy.
Love it.
Especially in sales, especially probably B2B sales. I don't know. So I show up with Alex, and we sit down with this guy, and he's like, okay. I kind of see, like, I actually see the value in what you guys are doing. Like, we'd be happy to sign up. And we're like, sweet. So we send him the contract later, but basically we jump in the car from there. And we're like, okay, great. Now we have one hotel partner here in Miami that we can continually reference when we go to like any other hotel. And so we drive down to like 2 other hotels in the same day. And we're just like, yeah, we're signing up Metropolitan by Como. They're super excited about it. And this was like a super high-end boutique luxury hotel, which was crazy that, they were one of the first ones to say yes. And so we just continually reference these guys, and then the other hotels were like, oh, well, I mean, I guess if they're doing it, it makes kind of makes sense. And so I think it's funny because right after that, our sales like slowed down a lot, but I think we kind of had like this confidence and this little, buzz or this excited nature of like going out and getting the hotels. So that was kind of how he became the co-founder. Then from there, I'd say probably to get to the question of the low points in the journey. I mean, we signed up these hotels, and then it was like really tough to sell. We were trying to sell like on Facebook ads and just going out and handing stuff to people, and we were really like not finding the right market fit with who we were trying to sell to. And we were kind of like, wow, this is a lot slower than we thought. And
You mean on the user end?
yeah,
People that would actually be going to the hotels?
yeah, because
Yeah.
we have like 2 or 3 properties down here in Miami. Let's just try to sell what we can to those hotels. And yeah, it got like pretty slow in terms of sales because we stopped working with the hotel in Providence and said, let's just focus our energy here in Miami. And we kind of, I don't want to say we lost confidence in it, but it was definitely like, again, sort of one of those painful moments where it's pretty slow and you're like, well, is this really going to work? But I think if you can go back to the first principle thinking of like, does this just make sense in general? And if the answer is yes, you can kind of continue working, regardless of what your traction might be at that point. So lower traction, the money from Rough Draft Ventures is running out. I have this idea that we can also sell in LA. So I met this person that introduced me to a hotelier there, and I decided, okay, we need a property in LA. And this is about the time we start learning about the competitors at the same time, that are all West Coast. And we're like, well, we better have market presence out there. So I spend some of our last money to try to go to LA and sign up this hotel. I end up sleeping in an Asian day spa that's like $30 a night it's like bright lights at night. And I'm just sleeping on like these hot rocks and like, or not sleeping. I was kind of like, I kind of had this girlfriend at the time that, was like, just kind of fell apart. And
I like how you say just kind of had this girlfriend.
Yeah, kind of had this girlfriend.
You can already tell that one probably didn't end well.
Well, I mean, it was funny. I mean, well, not funny at the time. No, she was really, really awesome. Actually, the girl that let me stay in their house that had burnt down.
Oh, right on.
It was remodeled, and she was super, super cool. And yeah, like I just started like traveling and working, going to LA and sort of things like we just like kind of lost communication a little bit. So I was kind of not in a great spot with that, running out of money, not many customers, fly all the way to LA, sleeping in this Asian day spa. And then I go to the hotel meeting and the lady just texts me, oh yeah, we're not interested. Sorry, I can't take the meeting. And I'm like, oh shit, like I have no money and like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I guess at moments like that was probably like one of the lowest points. That was actually probably the lowest point. Because
you're already questioning your idea to begin with. You've put all this effort into getting all the way out there to be shut down really abruptly, and she doesn't care, and why should she?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, dang.
Exactly. And in the midst of this, like I had texted the girl like that morning, like, oh yeah, like I don't know what happened, but I really like being with you and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, oh yeah, I like it too. But like, yeah, I guess it's kind of over. And so I was kind of like in the middle.
So a breakup and then like, no money.
Yeah. I'm awake like at like 5 a.m, don't know what time it is in this like brightly lit day spa thing. Like sending this message, just like, oh my God. So that was, yeah, I literally slept on rocks that night in the Asian.
You literally hit rock bottom.
On rock bottom. It was kind of bad. But again, then you think like, well, it's all part of the journey. It's all part of the story. So through that, the biggest lesson for me, I guess that was the low point to answer the low point question. And the biggest lesson through all that was really, again, I'm going to keep referencing Micah's interview, but I think what he said about understanding yourself and meditating and being able to kind of control your emotions and thoughts throughout this whole process is incredibly important and something that is probably really great investment of time for anybody that's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. And I can admit that like at that point, I was certainly not at my best and wasn't taking any time to think about how I was doing personally. It was just every day, every single second thinking about the company. And I think that points to, again, finding a mix of things to be doing constantly and a balance of things to be doing constantly to be so important as well. Granted, focus is key, but if you're overly focused, you might fall into negatively a downward spiral of some sort.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to focus on that self-development and especially the, like what you said, Micah said, the introspection. We talk about this a lot, being very introspective and just focusing on your self-development, internally, and doing a lot of sort of meditating, thinking, journaling. And by a lot, I mean in batched, times. I mean, you want to be efficient with it. You don't want to just spend all your time thinking and questioning yourself. I mean, that can be a downhill tumble right there pretty quick.
Sure.
I get that. I am so tempted to overthink things sometimes. So can't meditate too long, but it is very important to ask those internal questions and stuff. I appreciate you sharing that story, man. I mean, one thing, how old are you?
I'm 22.
Yeah, 22. That's something I just want to point out for you guys listening too, is I feel like it's so key to do this young. And by young, I really mean, like, I think if you're in your 30s, I'm still going to consider myself young anyways, but young in the sense that, you're not married, you didn't have a family, you didn't have a lot of the responsibilities that go along with, getting a little older. And so I think people shy away, when you're, 16, 18, 22, 25 years old. You want that security already. You want to succeed, be viewed by your peers as successful. And so a lot of the times what that means is just sort of going with the flow, and whatever society suggests to you, you do, because you're chasing this societal approval, this security, and maybe trying to avoid some risk. But that can quickly turn into a life that maybe you're not so proud of. And so being able to take these risks and, be able to, you can handle being broke and hungry and going through breakups and people judging you when you're young. It's a lot easier to handle when you're young than if you're in your 30s or 40s or 50s. People are going to judge you quite a bit harder. Then you're going to definitely be more tempted to think of yourself as unsuccessful if you're still, eating ramen with no money and no place to stay at 35 years old. But man, being able to do that while you're young is so powerful. And then, not to mention the cool stories you'll have. I mean, that was already a really interesting story. I have a ton of awesome stories that are awesome now in retrospect, right? And they're some of my best memories and best learning experiences in the moment. Absolutely miserable. But I would encourage people not to shy away from that. But one thing you said, though, Matt, was you said going back to first principles and thinking in terms of first principles. And I'm curious, what do you mean exactly by that? I wanted to dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, what that means to me, basically, like, Elon Musk is one of the biggest proponents of this.
I was hoping you'd go here.
So looking at basic foundational self-evident sort of assumptions, I guess, or propositions is what, if you Google this, that's what you'll start to find anybody talking about. And I mean, the way I view first principle thinking for our company is that if people like vacation in general, or people like spending time hanging out in nice environments like pools with beaches and palm trees, and people don't like to pay a lot of money to do anything, they want something that's affordable and a way to relax and get away, then to me, it makes sense that Daycation should exist because people like to go on vacation and people don't like to pay a lot for that experience. So that's, for me, does that make sense? It's kind of like
absolutely, yeah.
So that's kind of an example of how I think about first principles from that perspective. Or from the hotel side, if I have an empty thing, my job as a hotel is to fill that and make money from it. That's what my business is. The rooms are empty things that we fill with people so we can make money. So if an amenity is an empty thing that I can fill with people and make money, then that's sort of, from the hotel side, should be a no-brainer. But then you'll find that selling them that idea is maybe a little bit more tough. But that's kind of how I view the first principles thinking applied to the hotel space.
I think that it's a very interesting subject to go into. In fact, I'd love to do an entire episode on first principles. And Elon Musk, of course, is a great example. And let's see, there is a very famous blogger out there. His name is Tim Urban. Just posted a quote by him in the Facebook group. He has the blog Wait But Why, and he did a whole series, which is what I think you're talking about, on Elon Musk and why is Elon the way he is and how he's able to build all these really unique and successful companies that are doing things that nobody else is doing. It's just you can't touch it. And he talks about this concept of thinking from first principles, and he notices that this is something that Elon does habitually, is he thinks from first principles. And a good way to break that down, I think, for people listening, is thinking about the difference between a chef and a cook. And I think this is what Tim talks about. I'm trying to remember because it's been so long since I've read that, but this must be from him. Thinking about the difference between a chef and a cook. A cook is somebody that you're typically going to be following somebody else's recipe, right? A chef is somebody who is taking raw sort of food elements and putting them together in beautiful ways that nobody else has done before. And so, and that is thinking from first principles. And so what thinking from first principles sort of allows you to do is to start a company like Daycation, something that didn't exist prior to you starting it, Matt, and something that by taking these sort of empirical, self-evident truths about what people like to do, what hotels need, what's going on in the market right now, and combining them into a unique idea that somebody hasn't done yet.
Yeah.
And that's tough to do. And then the other way to build a business is, of course, following somebody else's recipe. Here's a model that's been done before. Can we do it better, or can we do it different? And that's more like being a cook. And that can work too, but you do see the massive success like the Elon Musks of the world coming from people that think more from first principles. And because they think that way, they're able to take self-evident things and observations and combine them into unique companies that nobody's ever done before. I just thought that was a really neat point. So, it'll keep you from where you'd come up with a really unique idea that nobody was doing yet. Of course, it's going to be you're going to be really tempted to question yourself. You don't have anybody to look to, like, oh, they did it, so why can't I? You're the tip of the spear, right? And so you've got to, by default, go back to these, like, okay, people like to take vacations, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. I think that can be kind of a guiding light for anybody starting a company, is like, if you believe, or if you've experienced it yourself. I mean, that's what's great about starting from experience. Like, we wanted to go use the pool, and I'm like, well, okay, even if people aren't buying right now, which now is not the case. We did a few hundred reservations over the last month, but like at that point, like, okay, if people aren't buying right now, that's fine, because I know that in my circumstance, and if I think I'm unique, then maybe I might have some sort of issue, because there are 7 billion people, which probably some other people felt the same way. It's a fairly good assumption most of the time. If you had this problem, it may not be unique to you, and if you really felt like you wanted it solved, then that's a good place to start from. And that's kind of related to the first principles, where if you take away all the fluff on top, what it was the fact that you're left with.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, trust me, guys. I question even successful dropout and what we're doing all the time. But again, thinking back to first principles, what's happening with the college degree? It's starting to it's losing its ROI. It's losing its return on investment. It's getting more expensive. More and more people are doing it, which doesn't make it that unique anymore. If you have a 4-year degree, you're not as special as you used to be.
It's safer
less
to
and
drop
less
out now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Almost. Yeah. Almost.
Yeah. Well, no,
There's
it could be. It's I think kind of in the direction you're going. Like some of the biggest risk is to not take a risk, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at employers, and employers are looking less and less at a degree. Most of them don't even, and I'm one myself, and I can tell you, we don't even care where you went to school. It's can you get results? And so you look at the future of employment is changing. The way the technology and the internet is now, freelancing, employers are starting to look at freelancers before they look at full-time employees.
Oh yeah.
So you look at those two, that's starting from first principles, these two factors. Then you look at companies like Praxis and CEO popping up all over the place that are helping people build these, what are now still considered unconventional careers, but I think in the near future it'll just be the norm. But basically helping people circumvent the typical route of going to college and getting a job, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You think about all those factors, and then you realize, hey, there needs to be a place where anybody who wants to get involved in this can chat, hang out, be in a community, and then connect with all these different resources. And again, all of this to illustrate what Matt and I are talking about, which is thinking from first principles, is so powerful, especially when you do get to the point like Matt's story where everything, you literally hit rock bottom and you're sleeping on rock bottom.
Yeah. That's so true, man. And actually, you know what is so funny? This coming full circle too. The way I found you, I just remembered, was when I Googled exactly what you're talking about, right? Is there an authority on people that are dropping out or people that want to get involved in this community? Again, maybe something that you experienced or you saw other people experience of, hey, I want to be involved in a community as a person who's doing X task. So the community for X task must exist. And so that's kind of the first principle for what you've started with Successful Dropout. And I think the way that I found you was exactly that, like searching for a community of people that had done had left school to pursue something. So
absolutely. Well, that's awesome to hear, man. I'm glad we're doing something right.
Would
love you to, and would love you to get involved in that too. And perhaps we can try to set up a little bit of a Q&A, or at least have you introduce yourself in the group, and people can ask questions if they wish to. With that, man, we're coming to the end of our time. I've really enjoyed chatting, but I have 2 questions I'd love to ask for you before I let you leave.
For sure.
And the first one is just, could you give us, or do you have any parting advice for any of our listeners who are thinking of dropping out to be an entrepreneur, but they haven't quite made that step yet? Just any parting advice?
Yes, I would give parting advice. I'm sure a lot of people have heard before. Some of the things I wrote down beforehand, just of, like continue to have persistence if it gets tough, or enjoy, the entire experience, go for it, get out there and just do it in the moment, kind of like the power of now, of just taking on the exact moment that you're in, surrounding yourself with good people, getting profitable or close to ramen profitable as quickly as possible. But then I thought maybe this is kind of an unconventional piece of advice that might be fairly actionable and helpful, but just take people up on opportunities and do seemingly random things, because they might actually lead to something great for you. There's a lot of pressure to be 100% focused on one specific task that you can see the outcome from, and you can get sort of that tangible benefit immediately and feel sort of that dopamine hit of like, oh, I accomplished something or I did something right. But you never know if something like, I don't know, walking down a particular street and looking at a building might lead to one of the biggest opportunities you've ever had, or which is one of the things that happened to me, or, talking to somebody on the side of the street leads to a hotel deal. Another thing that happened to us. So, if there's something like and a way we raised more money was going to a random last minute event that was hosted by a buddy of mine. So, don't lock yourself off from opportunities that may not seem directly related to your goal, because you may find that those things lead to amazing opportunities.
Love that, man. Love it. What's the best way that people can connect with you?
I'm always free to chat. Well, that's actually not true, but I'd be happy to respond and talk to anyone who needs advice or anything like that. People can reach me on my email, which is Matt, M-A-T-T, at daycationapp.com, like vacation for the day, app.com. Or you can always reach us on Intercom on our website. We're very responsive to that. So the chat app. Those are probably the best ways. Yeah.
Right on. Well, Successful Dropouts, you are the average of the 5 people you hang around the most, and you've been hanging out with Matt and Kylan today, learning what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed. For everything we talked about today, head over to successfuldropout.com and type Matt into the search bar, and the show notes will pop right up. And as always, stay hungry, stay foolish. For more information about how to drop out, grind, and succeed, go to successfuldropout.com. I also love questions. If you have a question about anything we talked about today, I want to hear from you. Go to successfuldropout.com and click the Ask Me a Question link at the top of the page.